So we're going to talk a little bit about, I say it's an art. It's really just, a little bit about what I've learned in my experiences and the way that I pray through things, to be honest, and discern big decisions. And so the first thing I kind of wanted to touch on was this very important question. Ooh. Who are you, Lord my God, and who am I? And I forgot to mention, and I should mention, because I'm Christian, this is from a Christian perspective, but this can be applied to anyone with any faith, really, in spirituality. I am going to be using some biblical reference today, but I think the promises of God are universal, and so we're just going to go with that. But so back to this question, who are you, Lord my God, and who am I? Today might feel a little bit like a retreat, because I'm going to be asking y'all some pretty deep questions and asking you to dig deep around some of these questions. But this question was actually asked by Francis of Assisi. And the brothers that he used to pray with all the time would watch him pray, and he would literally just sit there and ask this question. Who are you, Lord my God, and who am I? And this question is really important, guys, because of these two things. Number one, I believe that our identity is inherently connected with the identity of God. Because we're made by God, wouldn't it make sense that a lot about who we are and what we value would come from that as a piece of our identity? And the second is the truth of who we are as human beings is connected with the truth of who God is, the same thing, right? So throughout this talk today, I kind of want you to be asking yourself that question. Who are you and who am I? And that's going to be really important in the life decisions that you make if you are or are not connected to God, right? So this leads me kind of to the question of who are you and what are your core values? You will understand why this is so very, very important as we kind of dig into this. But to know who you are and what your core values are is instrumental in the choices that you make. Because all of the choices that you make have to really align with you being true to yourself, okay? For me, specifically, it's being true to myself within my identity and connectedness to God. So what I'm going to talk to you about first is some important things that I consider almost every single time I have to make an important decision in my life or discern something. And these are the 7 promises of God. They're biblical. And I'm just going to break them down for you, each of you. And here's some things to remember, right? And I'm gonna give you like a little short phrase for each of them too, so that if you want to write them down, you can. And you can remember them and kind of commit them to memory. So the promise number 1 is, I am your strength, right? This comes from, I can do all of this through him who gives me strength. God's not going to call you to something that he's not willing to support you in, okay? Meaning, and I always have this like strong sense when I'm discerning something or making a decision that I can't really fail, because in terms of what I decide, because when you know that God is with you and you're connected, you know that you're going to be taken care of, unless you're doing some things to intentionally harm others or whatever. I don't really believe that God is not going to support you and take care of you, but he will call you to certain things that you might not understand. Okay, they might not make sense to you, but he is going to support you through. So I am your strength was promise number 1. I am also, guys, just to let you know, sitting by a dog park outside because I'm in Dallas, helping my boyfriend move his entire apartment, and the background in there is not as pleasant as the background out here, but I happen to be right across from a dog park. So if you hear a lot of dog barking, that's what that is. Promise number 2, I will never leave you. And so that's taken from Deuteronomy. Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread of them, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you. I guess we can put this in the chat, Eric, but like, how many of you really kind of struggle with this one? If you have had an experience where during a pretty dark time or tumultuous time in your life, you have felt truly alone. I don't know if there's a raise your hand button or a chat, share with us. But this one's a little hard to believe. Specifically, yeah, I'm seeing that. And I identify with that. Specifically when you feel like things are not going to get better or you're in a really hard place. Because God is not something that we see. He's not someone we see. Clear as a picture. He's not, I guess he's tangible in certain ways, right? But you don't see him sitting next to us every day. It's difficult for a lot of us to feel like he's there when things consume us that are really hard, right? But the promise number 2 is, I will never leave you. This one is my absolute favorite promise ever. And this is the one that I really just repeat to myself over and over again. I have plans to prosper you. So this is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. So I love this because it's like, remember that God didn't bring you here to just give you a horrible life or to sabotage you in any way. There's an absolute purpose to us being here. I'm sure a lot of us are still kind of asking what that is, but just know this, that, that God's not gonna, he's not gonna leave you. He's gonna give you strength, but he's here to do good for you and to fight for you. This one I lean on quite a bit when I'm having a really difficult time. Like, I have to remember that God's not the enemy, that the things of this world just sort of bring us into dark places sometimes. But God doesn't work like the way that people thinks he does, in the sense that God doesn't do things to you. Like, for instance, my father died in 2017, and my child asked me, why did God do this? And, one of the really important things that I had to talk to him about was God's plans are so much bigger than ours. And sometimes most of the time, we see things in hindsight. He sees things in the big picture. And I will say that I'll tell you a little story. It's an email that I got a long time ago, and I hold on to this visual constantly, that a little boy plays outside in the yard as his grandmother sits on a rocking chair from the porch and she cross stitches. And he comes up to her every day and he says, what are you making, Grandma? What are you making? And she says, just be patient. Be patient. And he comes up to her every day and asks this question because from his perspective, looking up at his grandmother, he's looking at the bottom of the cross stitch, which is a bunch of really gross knots, and it doesn't look like a pretty picture at all. And what she says to him is, this is what I've been making, right? And this is a lot like God sees things. God sees things he sees things looking down. He sees this beautiful picture and the plan that he has. To us, it looks like a lot of knots, right? In hindsight, there are a lot of moments I'm sure that you've had, I'm sure you can raise your hands on this too, where you say, oh, that's why that had to happen, right? Or that's why that happened. I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. Promise number 4 is, I hear your prayers. John 14:13-14, and I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. You may ask me for anything in my name, and I will do it. I always say to my kids too, and to people, it's like, well, there's always an answer. And God does hear our prayers. And he said no, or he said yes, right? There's always an answer. Yes, no, maybe. He answered it, just maybe not in the way that we wanted him to, but he absolutely hears our prayers. I love this one. I will fight for you. The Lord himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. How many of you have heard the analogy of people just sort of like flailing when they drown? And it is when they lay still and get calm that they actually save themselves, right? I see this as a lot of what humanity does in general, right? We want so badly to control things in our lives that we will flail and put so much work and energy into things that really God already has. He's got it. He's up there going, I've got this. I'm going to fight for you. I will give you peace. This one's super important in discernment. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. Brooke and Eric or Dominique, can you tell me, I forgot how many times, is it 365 times that that God says, do not be afraid in the Bible? How many times is it?
I think it's something like that.
It's literally like
yeah.
every day of the year, right?
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. I will give you peace. What do? We literally sit, at least I do, as I watch my life unfold, wringing, my hands going, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? And he's going, don't worry about it. Again, very difficult, right? These are things we have to practice in order to get really good at. And promise number 7, I always love you. And this, the love of God was made manifest among us, that God sent his only son into the world so that we might live through him. And this is love, not that we have loved God, but that he loved us and sent his son to be the propitiation how do you say that word, y'all? For our sins. Okay.
Propitiation.
There's there. He made us, right? He is for us, not against us. He will bring us peace. He will give us strength. And these are promises we really, especially if we're Christian, really need to buy into, right? And if you have to train yourself to do that, maybe read them every single day to remind yourself. So now I'm going to ask you again, and I wanted you to take like 30 seconds to a minute to think about who you are and what are some of your core values. Are your core values, is your family important to you? Is your faith important to you? Is a place of non-judgment important to you? Just list them like in bullets. You don't have to write a paragraph. I want you to just kind of list your core values, things that are central to your heart and that you keep in mind as you're making decisions every day. I'm going to give you about a minute to do that. I'm sure it's pretty hard to define ourselves within a minute, right? But does anybody want to, can they talk, Eric? Can everybody talk, or is it just us? Like, how does this work?
Actually, the audio is turned off for,
Okay.
but
so maybe we just type in the
Yeah.
chat like a couple things that are central to our core values. And you guys are going to see, everybody's core values are deeply personal to them and unique. I'm looking. my goals, everyday challenges, dependability, right? Family, honesty, trust. Oh, acceptance, non-judgment. I'm there with you. Family's a big one. Family integrity, right? And you'll notice like a lot of us have very similar core values. I think it's like inherent in you, right? When you're born and you're a little baby, you don't know how to do anything but to love and just be, right? We're socialized into a place that we are now. Awesome. Thank y'all so much for sharing. And so I'm actually not gonna, like, I don't know if I'm not sharing anymore, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay. So I'm actually going to proceed without sharing the slides. The next question I have for you is, what is your sense of purpose, or what do you think it is? And this is a pretty deep question, right? And I want you to look at those core values that you actually have listed about yourself and think about how your sense of purpose relates to that. For instance, I knew as a girl in college when I had no boyfriend at all or husband at all, right, that I was going to be a mother one day. I knew it in my bones. I knew I was supposed to be a mom one day, and I take that calling very seriously. So one of my things that I'm most purpose driven in is being a good mom to the gifts I've been given. Right? So what do you think that your purpose is? Or you can have several. Yep. Helping others is a really big one on people's list, y'all. It's interesting to me that that's universal across the board. Most of the time when you ask somebody what their purpose is, the word help is within that definition for them. Mm-hmm. I don't know, can y'all see the chat? Everybody can see it, right?
Yeah,
So,
they put to everyone. If you do a message and it just says to host or panelist, everyone may not be able to see that.
Right, if you don't want to share to everybody, you can absolutely do that, but you know, to everyone. Being a leader, right? Helping others, loving people. These are not things, it is also very interesting to me that when I ask this question, even to myself, we as adults really focus on things, unfortunately, of this world. Like, how's my job going? What's my 401k look like? Like, where am I in relation to my goals and my 5-year plan? But when you think about what your absolute purpose is, most of the time, it's about emotional things, helping others, loving others, making a difference. And that's usually the reason that you do what you do, most people. Because if you've got to spend your time in a place for 8 to 9 hours a day, you want to make sure that it means something, right? So we've got a lot of help here, a lot of support here. Okay, here's another deep question. And this might be one that actually, I don't know that you can define, or not everybody's comfortable defining. And so I'm going to tell you what my answer would be. But what does God's voice sound like to you? You know, I've had actually quite a few people I've spoken with, prayed with, say, like, what does God's voice even sound like? You tell me to listen to what God says. I have no idea what that even sounds like. And for me, it comes generally it comes with a feeling. It comes in a whisper. It does not, sometimes a shout, but it does not come by way of inciting confusion, fear, panic, disgust, doubt, and the like, right? I feel like God's presence for me usually brings love, peace, joy, calm. And by the way, too, that word peace is such a tricky one because I have absolutely felt peace in the midst of chaos. I've felt a lot of peace in the midst of chaos. As my father, lay dying on his deathbed, I felt a sense of peace there. So what I wanted, but I did feel peace there. I felt God there. And people, I love that y'all are saying how you hear God's voice. I'm looking in the chat. Yep, it's gentle, it's soft, it's affirming. A lot of people hear God in music. That's a powerful thing. It's why we use that gift. I like to tell this story actually, guys, because there's a couple of times that I've heard God's voice and I know that it's God, right? But I also know that it probably didn't come in the way that I expected it to come. I told a story about this praise and worship that I was singing at one time. And I was like, we were taking a moment of silence. There was going to be no music. And I was down on my knees praying, and it was everybody was quiet. You could have heard a pin drop in there. And I've got, my hands clasped. And at this point, I'm about 8 months pregnant with my first child. And my number one fear was that I was just going to be, I don't know why. I thought, what if I'm not a good mom, right? It was something that crossed my mind a lot. And so I'm sitting there praying, it's completely quiet. And I'm like, well, God, I really want to be a good mom. So if you think that I'm going to have trouble with that, I just want you to tell me what to do. Just want you to tell me what to do right now, and I will do it. Wherever you go, I will go. It was like, and I literally heard a voice in my head say, I want you to be quiet. And I laugh about it now because the truth is, like, sometimes that is what God calls us to. He calls us to stillness. And I heard it like clear as day. I want you to be quiet, which is one of the hardest things for me, is to get still. And so I sat there in prayer for the rest of my time in silence, and just being, right? And right after that time of prayer, we wrapped up the evening praise and worship and everything. And a man came up to me from the congregation and said, hey, I don't know you, you don't know me, but I was praying and I heard God say something, and I think it's meant for you, so I'm just going to say it. He said, you're going to be a really wonderful mom. And sometimes, I guess the whole point of that story is sometimes we don't have to do anything, really. I think just as part of our humanness, right, that we think that we have to keep doing in order to see a result. And sometimes we hear God's voice in the most still moments. And so I wanted to share that with you guys. But again, really important, God's presence usually brings love, joy, peace, the like. Confusion, doubt, fear, disgust, panic are not of God. I really feel this the most when I'm trying to do something big, or I feel like God is calling me to something big in my life. And all I can think of is how I'm not good enough. That is not of God. Just to give you a little perspective on what I'm talking about. Intuition is everything, especially when you're close to God. Brooke, I know you were saying that you're really passionate on this subject. I'm looking at the time here. Do you want to say a few words about that? What we're talking about is like discernment of spirits, right?
Wow.
you're in a position where you are trying to decide something and you get a really
I'll
bad,
give you an example. I mean, I think it's important because before I learned about it, you just think, sometimes you think it's creepy, you get a feeling about something and then you don't know what to do about it, and if you're a believer and the Holy Spirit lives within you, then you do get discernment. I've had it for a long time and didn't know what it was, before I learned about it. But I had a particular situation, and that's why I think it's so important, is because we have to pay attention to it, right? I had a friend who was pregnant, and I have twins, and my twins were 4 months old. She was still pregnant. And I was driving by her work one day and I got a strong, just a burden, like something is going on, like a burden of prayer, a burden of, I didn't know what it was. I was a fairly new Christian at the time. It was just a burden, just a heaviness. And I pulled over and I had my 2 babies in the back seat. You're not supposed to leave babies there, but she was working in a nursing home. And I went in and I said, "Where's Cherie?" And they said she was rushed to the hospital. And she's having trouble with the babies. She ended up having them early. So it surprised me. It brought me to my knees. It made me think, okay, God, like you told me something and it was real. So I think you're right, that intuition that a lot of people think that they have, it's really the Holy Spirit giving you important things about yourself and other people. And it may only be for a moment, but I do think it's really important. I'm still learning, but sometimes you kind of let it go and, oh, that was crazy. But to discern that voice among everything else going on in our lives is just, it's a blessing to be able to know that that's happening,
I'm muted. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think that's a really important thing. I always say intuition, so that if people are not spiritual, or if they're spiritual, not religious, or they're not Christian, it can be universal, right? But intuition, when you are connected spiritually to something that is a higher power, is a very powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And you should absolutely trust it. It is a gift. If something doesn't feel right, it usually isn't. And anytime I haven't trusted my intuition, it's not that God hasn't blessed me and put me exactly where I'm meant to be eventually, but it is definitely been a detour, right? Or ended up being a hardship. Thank you for sharing that. The next thing I was going to say, talk about is, how do you know if you're making the right choices? Okay. So I say, here we go. Number 1 is get real clarity, like get some clarity on who you are and what is true to your core values and God as you know him and how it relates to you. So get clarity on who you are and what are your core values in relation to your connectedness with God. Like, I always say the prerequisite is that you be connected spiritually in order to know truly what your core values are. If you guys were reading that chat, like I said before, core values does not say that my 401k hit 5 million by the time I'm blank, okay? Most people are saying that I help people, that I love people, that I'm not judgmental with people, that I honor people as they are. These are things that were put into us for a reason so that we could pour them out into the world. So number 1 is, how do you make good decisions? You get clarity first on who you are and what is true to your core values and God as you know him. Get clarity on what God sounds like and feels like to you. If you're not sure, guys, I always say, look back on those promises that I presented on. There's 7 promises. If what you're hearing does not align with that, it's probably not the voice of God. I'm not saying who it is. I'm just saying sometimes it's us. It's our self-doubt. It's whatever. It's not. Does it align with those promises? And what does God sound like and feel like to you? So we get clarity on, first, your core values, second, what God sounds like, and third, your purpose. What do you think God calls you to in this life? When I say a calling, calling's different than a job, right? I truly feel called to help people. I own a business in which I'm coaching people every day, helping them, realize what their purpose is and how to get there. And helping with some of the operational stuff too, because that's how we get there. But your purpose, what do you think God's calling you to? For me, some of that is being a mom, I'm called to be a mother. I'm called to help people. I'm called to see the value in people that might not see the value in themselves. I'm very clear on those things. The second thing I say is on how do you make the decision is daydream to your heart's delight. This is sort of discernment some of the time. And you can do this in prayer or meditation. I actually, I think I did it before, but it had never been articulated in a way that I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I do. I went to a retreat once where they talked about Ignatius of Loyola and how he discerned things. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with Ignatius of Loyola. I studied a lot of philosophers and saints in Catholic school. And so we talked a lot about their lives, but he was not a good person. Like he was a person that at first, like he liked to drink. He's a soldier. He liked to drink, he liked to have a good time with women. And he was, I think, the youngest of 14 kids. And they said that they designated him to go to the holy life. And he was like, that is not happening. I am not the person for that. And then he was wounded in the war where a cannonball literally struck him in the leg and broke it in half. He had a lot of time to think about things while he was recovering. And one of the things that he would do, which is something I'm sure we all do, but he put a name to it, is he would think about decisions he had to make. And he would imagine them like playing out in his head. And then he would decide which felt more centered in God or peaceful. So this could be even two good decisions, y'all. It could be maybe you've been offered a job in San Antonio to go, join a clinical practice there. So what I suggest always is like, sit down and like really like daydream about it. What would it be like for you to be living in San Antonio in this clinical practice? Maybe you get more money, maybe you don't, right? In an apartment. I'm just giving you an example. Versus staying in your hometown where your family is. Maybe you have less money, but what is central to your core values? Family is one of mine, so it's something I take into account. And so he would daydream about different scenarios and how they would go, and he would really like pray through them and think about which felt more peaceful to him, which I really think is a lot of what we all do. I call it, I'm like, I just go down worst case scenario, but it doesn't always have to be the worst case scenario. It can be like 3 really good things that you're deciding. But daydream to your heart's delight and keep in mind what your core values are. Sometimes you can make a list. Like, what are my core values and which one of these things aligns most with that? This one is one of my favorites ever because it's sort of silly sounding, but it's very true. Get a board of directors. And I say, I have a spiritual board of directors, y'all. I have a board of directors in my life. And what that means is you choose people, like what does your board of directors look like? And it's going to be very different from your neighbor's board of directors. It's where you draw a very personal boundary around your core values. And you decide who really embodies that and who you would essentially trust with your life if you had to ask them to make a decision for you. I have what I call my board of directors, and I think it's so valuable. There are certain people in my life that align with a lot of my core values. Their core values do with mine. They're not, they hold no judgment. They are seeking the Lord constantly. That's important to me. Family is very important to me. Family is important to them. And I'll say this, you can draw this personal boundary around your core values, and who you think might be on your board of directors might not be there. Even your family members. They're family members of mine. I love them, but I'm not going to go to them and ask them about what they think I should do in the case of this very difficult decision, because there's generally a lot of judgment around what they think. So they don't align, right? And so I may not have them on my board of directors. But people think it's really funny that I have a board of directors, and I encourage everybody to have a board of directors in your life. And I'm sure you're already naming them in your head. You're going, okay, I know who mine are. And so that, I'm going to close with this before we pray and ask questions and all that stuff. You know, someone once told me, I think it's Psalm 33:6, where it talks about, maybe that's wrong, but where it talks about how God made the heavens and he breathed the stars into existence. And I always think that's such a powerful image, because while we are down here making decisions and coping with life, and a lot of time really worried or trying to control what's happening, do you think that the God of the universe who breathed the stars into existence is somewhere just wringing his hands like, I'm so worried about what's going to happen to Eric? Like, what's going to happen? No, he's not worried at all. And so I encourage you with that thought. I love that verse, because it's like, yeah, this is the God who breathed the stars into existence. If you think he doesn't have this, you're flat out wrong. And so to kind of wrap it up, rely on the promises, get clarity. Daydream and think about where God's voice is within that. And then get a board of directors. If I'm not sure, and I'm pretty sure, I still ask someone on my board of directors. And if they say, hey guys, hey Lisa, this is not what I think sounds right, I take that into serious account. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. Do I have any questions? In fact, let me put my information up on the share screen.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to use that Q&A box, and we'll answer those. I know this could be a whole sermon series, and I know you've only had 45 minutes to give us a great overview, so thank you so much.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions, comments, like thoughts about what I've said, things you found were interesting? You want to know what kind of dog that is in the background?
You know, one of the things you said about the daydreaming, and I love that, but also dreaming at night is a way that God communicates all through the Bible. And I read recently in Lee Strobel's book, A Case for Miracles, he has a whole chapter on dreams and how God communicates in dreams, even more so in other cultures. And it's just fascinating to me. Some of my dreams are really weird, so I don't know what he's saying, but personally.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Working on my personal board of directors, y'all. That's what I like to hear.
All right.
Does the host have any comments, questions, anything they'd like to add, or that came up for them when we were kind of talking about it?
There was an underlying theme that was resonating with me as I was listening to you, Lisa. And the one word to sum it up is obedience, right? So discernment is very important, but oftentimes we can see things and not act on them. So the way that discernment is effective is by us being obedient. So like Eric just said, you can see the visions, but we must act on those visions, right? God can be trying to get our attention. He shows us things, but he shows it to us so that action follows. And so I would just leave with that obedience is necessary when God reveals things to you.
I love that, Dominique. Thank you for adding that. I can't believe I didn't put that word in this presentation, but I got to tell you, think about how many times, guys, that you feel like you're supposed to go a certain way and you're like, really? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me, but you've done it anyway, and it worked out. Brooke, you're on mute, but we'd love for you to share. Thank you, Dominique.
Sorry. When you said that sometimes that God will give you something unexpected, for me, that's when I know it's God. because I can come up with a lot of things that I think are what God wants me to do, or, just whatever. But it's when he hits me with something and I go, what? That's, that's when that's him, because if you can't even think it, if you don't, it doesn't even occur to you, that's how I kind of know. You mentioned that sometimes unexpected, or he's telling you something that you just didn't, you don't even understand it. But I think that's important.
Yeah, you're like, that thought never occurred to me, right?
Yeah.
That's important.
And it's usually something that's a good thing, for you as a person or whoever you're dealing with. But and you think, oh, that's great. That must be God. Especially with your kids, you deal with your kids and you don't know what to do, and then some idea comes to you and you're like, well, that wasn't me. That was the mom that God wanted me to be, that I didn't know how to do. So
Eric, I don't see any, how can I get more involved in this organization? I live in Austin, Texas. That's Christine Moore. Brooke, do you want to reach out? Christine, go ahead and put your stuff in the chat if you haven't. And
there's an Austin Spiritual Care Network, Christine. So if you go to the website or go to Facebook, there's an active Facebook page, and they met last month, didn't they, Eric?
Actually, they're meeting next week, and they are having a Zoom meeting. So yeah, that information is on the Facebook page, Austin Spiritual Care. And so, yeah, we have quite a few. If you go to the Spiritual Care Network page, you can see all the different groups that are associated with that page on Facebook. We have Houston, Denton just started one, Dallas, Fort Worth, Tyler, Corpus Christi, and we meet in Houston. Since it's so big, we meet twice a month here. So, yeah.
well, thank you all so much for your time today. Just somebody, Eric, did you want, I think we decided, am I going to close in prayer?
Yes, please do. You have beautiful prayers.
Thank you. Guys, let's bow our heads and pray. Father, we come to you today having set aside this time, honestly, to hear your voice and what it is that you need us to hear. So we thank you so much for this time together and for this time with you. We ask, Lord, that with this information, that you would help us to be proactive in being obedient, in hearing your voice, Lord, in getting clarity that can only come from you. We especially pray for anyone who is discerning something pretty difficult right now. God, that you would take away any spirit of confusion, doubt. And that you would give us strength in our daily lives to do your will, to listen to you, to have our whole lives anointed by you, God, and to follow you. We love you so much. We praise you. And we thank you for the many gifts that we've been given. And we ask all of these things in your name. Thanks, guys, for joining today.
Awesome. Thanks again, Lisa, for your gift and your. Thank you, Brooke and Dominique, for co-hosting today. Good seeing y'all. And next month is going to be very deep as well. We have Joni Ogle. If y'all know her, she's a very seasoned therapist down in Houston. She's going to be speaking on the LGBT community and sex addiction and chemical dependency that comes along with that. So that's going to be a very deep subject, but great information. So stay tuned for that. Next month is going to be on September 22nd. We're actually moving that to a Wednesday in September instead of Friday, but more details to come. Once again, if you'd like to join as a member of the Spiritual Care Network, visit our website at spiritualcarenet.org. And thank you to Brooke. She's about to send out the link to do your evaluation. And also you're going to
Okay,
get
let me,
tomorrow. If you don't have time to do it today, you'll get it in an email tomorrow.
I think I sent it to you, but let me see if I can find it.
Great. All righty. Well, thanks everybody for joining.
Thanks so much, Eric. Y'all have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.